Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connections, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hi, and welcome back to Basics. I have an extremely special guest today. I've been trying to get her on the show for a couple of months now since her business partner, Keith Trimmels, shared tidbits of her amazing story on episode 34. When asked how to be introduced, Ilse van Goth puts the titles mom and grandmother first, followed by business owner, author, professor, sailor, and humanitarian. And trust me, I'm leaving out a handful other titles. Hello, Ilse, and welcome to Back to Basics.
Hello, Leticia. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so excited about this conversation because I've been anticipating since Keith shared with us, about the book you wrote and about your amazing story. And I mean, just to say that it sounds like the two of you have an amazing partnership. So that it's already quite rare these days.
Yes, it's true. We have been partners and really good friends since, I think, 1999. And we do have... Trust me, we do have our differences once in a while, but we somehow seem to work through it. And this is very gratifying to me because we always did it with compassion, but also with respect. So to have a good friend like that for all those years, it's really a good feeling, yes. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. And I can tell, and the audience too, because it's been on the show, that there's an admiration between the two of you. And I always say that that's such a key component in any relationship, call it
Right.
marriage, call it business partnership, to have that admiration for whomever you're partnering with. I think it's one of the ingredients to success.
Yes, absolutely. We in a way we're similar, but on the other hand we're not so similar. But for some reason we just are able to overcome some of those stupid little things in ways. Sometimes through humor, we use humor, or we use really deep conversation and go really into it. Why we are sometimes. Have those differences, but we see their similarities too, and we'll pull out those similarities, and we always somehow end up okay. And to me, for us, both of us, it's the respect we have for each other.
Wow, that's already valuable insight, Ilse. So thanks for that. So obviously we know a little bit of you because you share about your book, and obviously I don't get to invite many people on this show that can talk firsthand of having to go through that journey and that challenge of being raised in a war-torn area, Germany, to say the least. So, I mean, that's such a recent history that it's very intriguing, and it's also important to tell the stories because it's such a tragic chapter on a recent history. That I'm personally very intrigued. And the one thing I'll share with you is that my dad, because, my parents are Sicilian, he was 8 when the American troops invaded his hometown in Sicily to, start what, became the victory of the alliance. And Italy was partnering with Germany at the time. So he was also on a rough side of the story.
Yes, honestly, I do like Sicily. I've been there, so really, I like the country itself. But yes, my story is probably there's some similarities to it because I was born really into war-torn Germany and grew up in a socialist authoritarian of East Germany. So to me, I had it coming out of a war-torn country and have to grow up into a socialist communist country that really was very difficult, a difficult childhood. But on the other hand, we didn't know any different. till we grew up later on in life.
Yeah, that I guess is part of the. Some people say that, like, if you don't know what you're missing, you maybe don't miss it that much, and then it's until later that you see, wow, I went through all that. Do you think about your childhood? I'm sure, and you say, wow, did I live all that?
Yeah, because I don't really think anything of my unusual childhood for the longest time. We grew up and had children around us. They experienced the same thing, and but in the end, the childhood, when I think back, was filled with a constant and unstated fear of survival, of the war, the starvation which we experienced, and the loss of freedom because of the communist country we had to endure till we escaped at one point.
Well, and I by the way, I bought your book as I was doing research for this. I haven't read it yet. I've read tidbits, but I definitely am like, no, I have to read it. And in paperback. I don't even want to read it in Kindle. But your book is called Five Lives: The Spirit of Survival.
Yes, right.
And if I understand correctly, so you have a sister and a brother.
Yes, and two cousins who contributed to this book. This is quite interesting how it started. We all went on vacation together in the south of France years ago, and it came to my mind, maybe we should write down some of our childhood experiences. And the immediate response from my family was, from my sisters and brothers, no, we don't need to talk about it. We're nothing special,
Really?
nothing we can talk about it, or it was the way it was. And then it took me almost 2 years to pull out stories out for them to just write down in German. They speak English, but they wrote it out in German briefly. It's a very specific situation out of our childhood. And I put it into context because I knew all the stories to begin with, but I wanted them to tell me themselves their stories. And I put it into context, obviously into the English language. And then the stories, some of them were humorous, some of them were so sad, some of them were funny, but and some of them were actually really, really cruel. And I had to decide. I think I had like 40 stories. I think there are 32 stories, short stories in this book. And I had to decide, should I really put the stories which are really gruesome we experience into it? I had to pull them out because there are some stories which are pretty horrible, but not to the point where it was so bad that I just didn't feel this should go into the book. But and then in the end, when I received all the stories, one of the oldest cousin, Lori, she told me, I said, Lori, if I would come back and ask you for a couple of stories, she said, no, Ilse, I will never, never talk about it again. And I said, why? She said, I never talked about it till you asked me to, and I will never do it again. The chapter is closed. It was too painful for her and for us too to remember some of the things and actually acknowledge that things were really not so good, But as children, we didn't know any different. We just didn't know. We thought that was, quote unquote, for us normal. Yes.
I cannot even begin to imagine how traumatic that was. But besides the horror of what was going around you, you were also a child and you liked to play. And so, who were you as a little child in the midst of all that craziness? I know I read somewhere you like to go into the forest.
Yes, this was my happy place actually, and around where we lived there was a lot of forest. And when we played, we went into the forest and built little huts there out of moss and so on. And but it was kind of an escape from the war town city village we lived in outside Berlin. And it took us away from the older people who they had the demon of their own, and the children at that point were really let kind of loose. We were not latched children anymore. We just went our own way, came home in the evening, and often we we found some food along the way, some berries, or we had to climb fences. And I'll have to say that we stole some apples from somebody's garden and things like this. But in order just to survive, and waited for my mother to come home in the evening, and maybe she brought some food home, because most of the women worked in the households for the Russians who were stationed in this town. And she brought scraps back to us, and we were able to have something to eat then. So I think it was just as survival skills, emotionally, physically, and also as a child. You just didn't know everything that went on. You just knew you had to survive every day.
Wow, that as you're telling me this story, obviously, and I imagine you're in a war zone. There's tons of things going on. You were more or less how old at this stage?
During the end of the war, I was born 1940, and my memories when I was 4 or 5 years old, the end of the war, I experienced more consciously. But my brother was 2 years older, and he obviously had more vivid recollections, and my cousin was actually 4 years older than I am, and she absolutely had some vivid recollections of what really went on. I thought that's what went on, but I never could put it into context or into words till I discussed this with my brother and my sister and my cousin, and they said, "Yeah, that's what it was actually." We had to hide, not because it was a playful thing to do, but the bombs were coming down again, and we had to hide in cellars again. So I was young then, and we didn't escape till 1953. So I was 13 years old when we escaped from East Germany. So throughout that time, I had experiences, the after-war experience, and then also the introduction to the communist ideology, which was taught obviously around us and which was taught in our school system.
Wow, that's amazing. I was thinking before, when I asked you about the age, what I was thinking is, I have a 5-year-old, and I'm thinking how now we raise our kids, and we get so afraid to let them go, out of our sight. And here you are, you're 4, and you're going around the village, going get apples, and your mom is working.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, the resilience that you have, your generation. My dad is a little older. He's 1934. He was born.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like 8 when the invasion happened in Sicily. But that I always admire that time bracket, because you guys really have seen a lot of things, and it's a little different, right? But my parents still live in Venezuela. That's the country they immigrated after they left Italy. And as you know, the situation in Venezuela is really bad right now.
Right.
And most people say, why don't they leave? Why are they still there? And my dad always say, we've lived way worse than this.
It's true. It's kind of interesting. Of course, we were surrounded, my sister, my brother, and the kids, only by women throughout this time, because the men were captured during the war and were off somewhere in Siberia, in the Gulag there, and so on. So the women kind of kept everything together. And for me, to see that later on, I realized how strong those women were, because, they had to endure a lot, because not because they just had to find food for the children, but they also, as young women, most of them were young, there were Russian troops around the city, and at night they were kind of let loose, and the women always had to hide, so they weren't raped. Obviously that happened because I watched it myself, women being raped and so on, because that's the war, and after the war, that's what happened. And coming out of that, and the women still taking care of the children, no matter what they had to do. That to me, that's pretty powerful.
Absolutely.
It's still now I get very emotional about it because those women, yes, without them, I don't think we would have survived.
No, I totally agree. And well, that's kind of the heritage I come from as well, in terms of the women that I see in my Sicilian heritage are extremely strong and resilient. So before we move into how you made, I mean, from that very tough beginning, you really made an amazing life for yourself and for everything I hear and that I read. But tell me a little bit more, just to close, on your parents. So your dad was he was a prisoner somewhere?
Yeah, he was. The German men were captured, and then they were put into prison. All men had to go to war there, even young boys, so to speak, in teenage age, and they were captured. And later on, they were let out, and it took a very long time for my father and for my family, or my mother and us, to reconnect again. It was a very tumultuous time, and nobody knew where everybody was at all times. So it was, we didn't see him for many years. After we escaped, we connected with him again in West Germany. So,
and were you able, was your mom, because I know, well, my husband and he's on episode 3, but his family, being from the Netherlands, his dad was born in a not concentration, it wasn't an extermination camp, but a concentration camp in Indonesia. And his grandparents, they also were separated, the families, and then they could never, they tried to keep the marriage going, but it was so bad at the end of the day, so it said that the grandparents eventually split up.
It is kind of interesting. That's a good question, actually. We were teenagers when we met our father again, and to me, I can only speak for myself, but my sister pretty much feels the same way. He was more like a stranger to us because he was not there, not because of nobody's fault. I mean, not our fault, but the whole historic situation, the way it was. He never was there for our formative years. So he was more or less like a stranger to me. And I always, he was my father, but it was a very difficult situation. My mother and my father, they stayed together, and they're now passed. They're both dead now. But it was a very stressful situation for us children to have a father in a family again, because my brother actually took the place of my father through all the years he wasn't there. And that was, for him, it was very traumatic, because all of a sudden he was, I wouldn't say pushed aside, but he is father again, and you're just the young boy again. But my brother really took his place, the place of my father. He was very responsible. Often somehow, I don't know how he did it, he found food for us, and he went out and on the lake and caught fish, and just to bring some fruit to the table, and or some wood to have some fire in the stove. He was just a real provider in that sense. But when my father came back, he removed him from that place, and the father took over. And I think that's a lot of children probably went through that after the men came back from war, because they were oft like strangers.
Wow, that's no, I can imagine how difficult, and the dynamics. And again, because of my husband, I see it. I see that his family, and we speak a little bit in his episode, they have, even now, the relationships between the family and the family member. Everybody's perspective is so different from what happened.
Exactly.
That is like they're telling different stories. And I could relate to what you say about your cousin, maybe not wanted to speak about it and all that. And so, but kudos to your mom that was able to pull the family through that, obviously. And then
Right.
1953 came, and so you were living outside of Berlin. And then where did you escape to?
Well, we escaped to West Berlin. That's a long story. It's
Mm-hmm.
also in my book how we escaped. You just can walk or take the train and drive. You had to do it in the middle of the night. And I didn't know. We didn't know we would escape that night. My mother kept it real quiet. And all of a sudden she woke us up and said, "We're going." And it took us some time, 2 days it was 80 kilometers north of Berlin to get into West Germany at the time. The wall wasn't up at that time, but the Russian patrols and so on were everywhere. So you had to make your moves at night. But we did get there, and eventually, after a while, we connected with my father. And so that's how we got to be in West Germany.
Wow, and so through all these, obviously you were studying somehow. Were the kids able to get some?
Right. Yeah. We in East Germany, of course, we studied. We were indoctrinized to the communist way of ideology and socialism, and then you had to make sure you did not talk. Have any opinions about it. You have to take it. You could not talk against it. You were otherwise you were often adults were saying something about what was proclaimed in the communist way of life, and they often disappeared. So we kids knew that that's what would happen. So we had to kind of also. Never say much out of what we were supposed to say. It's kind of like make sure you don't talk about things that might be listened to, because neighbors often were spies for the government too. So that's well recognized. You probably had neighbors. You never knew who your neighbor would be a spy, because a spy also, if you're a spy, then you get a better then you
Treatment.
Treatment, and you get better food stamps, and you didn't have to stand in line for hours for a loaf of bread and things like this. So some people took that road. And so we always had to be very, very cautious what we were saying. And so that's kind of a horrible way to live. And that's why, for me, that kind of life is destructive to the human mind.
Absolutely no, and you talk to me, and of course, as I share, I'm from Venezuela, and you see
Right.
that now in my country, which was something that we
Yes.
would never experience. Of course, they're taking on the Cuban model, and I live in Miami, so I have a lot of Cuban friends, also with quite interesting stories, and that's so sad that that you're telling a story that that it's recent, but it's also there quite a chunk of years separating them. And that there's some people that are still, that's very much there day to day today.
I totally don't understand that. If you just have to wait in line for hours for a loaf of bread, and you cannot get into the university because you're not a declared communist, because only people like that could go into, were accepted to universities. I really, it's so obnoxious, and I hope people will see the huge flaws in that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's to me, it's really mysterious how, but I think it really has to do a lot with what you say, the indoctrination.
It's totally indoctrination. Believe me, Leticia. When I first came to West Germany, I questioned things too. Why you could actually select, if you go to a store, you actually could select between three pair of socks. You can actually select, the color. In East Germany, there were no socks, or if there were socks, they were probably all in the olive green color. it's just the thought of being able to select something and make up your own mind. You actually can buy butter. How great is this? And you look over your shoulder if you actually do buy butter. It's just you have to get used to being able to make your own mind up about things. In former East Germany, it was you were told how to think, and that change took for me not a long time, but I noticed that in the beginning, I was intimidated by the wealth of things, by the choices you had, and to me that was obviously after a while, it was just so wonderful to have this kind of life. And then I looked back and I said to myself, how can people actually not be able to choose or say things you would like to say without being put into jail? So it's a transition. There was a transition, but my goodness, it didn't take too long, but there was a transition. Mm-hmm.
I believe it. Actually, I'm very happy that whatever it was that happened within you and your family and then your mom, I guess, that you were able to resist, the full power of that indoctrination, because it's powerful.
It is very powerful. It's so, it comes in really different ways. And so it's extremely powerful. And I tell you, I go back to Germany quite often, once a year, and sometimes I meet up with people I grew up with in former East Germany, and they've been under the East German government for so many years more. And it is very difficult now for me even to have a conversation, free conversation. Not that they think they should go back to to communism, but it's just kind of. I think it takes another generation to get over this, over the influence they had for so long, to feel much better, much freer as a person.
I totally can see that. But it's great that you're able to go back and in that you are also evolving, I guess, and seeing the changes. And I can that happens to my parents also cannot go back to Italy. Like they go for vacation, they spend the summer there, but they cannot, they say they cannot feel they cannot relate to people the same way, even their family. It's very hard, right? That you cannot relate to your brother or your sister or your cousin because they now are under a different completely experience.
Yes, there's a lifelong, it's a whole generation that's, in my mind, has been lost. It takes another generation to move forward. But I do have this, being in West Germany and then in the United States and become my own businesswoman and so on. My mind just is exploding with all the things I can do. And when I go back there, it's like somebody's closing, the shutters, and like I'm talking to the walls, to the people there. They're nice people, don't get me wrong, they're friends and so on. But it's this blank stare in their face, that they cannot get it. And I understand that totally. Even though they travel now to, around Europe and so on, and also to the United States, but it's just different. It's different. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So let's move on to now. You get all these chances, all these opportunities. What happened? You came straight to the U.S. or what was the
No, I didn't come straight through to the U.S., but for some reason, I always had in the back of my mind, and I saw one time as a young adult, I saw a movie, some kind of cowboy movie, and I saw, this sounds really funny because I tell this story to Keith all the time, and I saw this cowboy movie and this, the freedom that was out there, and the wide open places and so on, and it's really really intrigued me, and so to me that was there was more freedom than I experienced in West Germany, because I like the open spaces, And so I think that's in the back of my mind. I always had to come. I want to come over here. I don't know if I want to live here forever, but I got married, and so I ended up here, and I'm glad I did.
And you get married to someone from the U.S. or someone
Yeah,
back?
now my ex-husband, he was a psychologist, and I got married, and from the U.S. Yes, and we lived for a long time. We had 3 children, and but somehow it didn't work out, and I became an American, obviously, and my children, they're all grown. They're all productive. They're all fun. They're beautiful children, and I always have 7 grandchildren on top of that.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, but I'm still working as a businesswoman. I'm still engaged in the business world. I'm still engaged with in volunteer work. I go on mission trips with groups here, and I came over here and continued my education. I completed my doctoral studies in German literature and language, and I taught that for a while. But I also was interested more to become an entrepreneur, to become my own businesswoman. And eventually I did, and been for a long time now. Oh God, it's 25 years. And but throughout I kept teaching as an adjunct professor at universities and colleges, and also overseas. I go overseas a lot and taught there for the University of Maryland and so on. So when I think back, I actually did exactly what I wanted to do. I teach, and I became a business person, and I like to travel because I do travel business-wise a lot. And also I have a good business relationship with my friend Keith. It's very supportive in everything I do. So when I think back, I'm pretty good. I'm doing good.
That's amazing. Well, it sounds that way. And the what blows me away, and by now, one of the things that this podcast is giving me is the opportunity of meeting amazing people like yourself and here listening to their stories. But one thing I'm starting to notice is that brilliant people like you make something sound so easy. You just breezed through it, where most people would be like paralyzed by fear and saying it's too late in my life and I cannot do this and I cannot do that. And it's crazy,
Well, I don't know. I always remember my mother's telling me, never give up, never give up. And then I look back what they had to go through and never gave up. They came out of it okay also. And as beautiful human beings, positive. They had a lot of positivity about them. Life needs to be lived and so on. It's, I have to share this with you too. I was working in Germany for 5 years one time on a project with the Department of Defense dependent schools and so on. And I thought to myself, I always go forward. And I thought to myself, there's a good slogan. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. And when I came back to the United States, I said, I should really get this slogan somehow for myself, And then a friend of, was it Keith or somebody else, told me, there is already this logo, this phrase by a big company. Let's do it. Let's do it. I think that's what it was.
Yes.
So, but then I thought, well, in essence, what I'm trying to say is, just do it. The logo is
that's just do it. It's Nike's.
Yeah, just do it at Nike's. And I thought I was that's a great one. I'm going to go to have it, get it for myself and so on. But that's my mission always. You just got to do it. And obviously I do have days, but like everybody else. But I told Keith too, I decided years and years ago, if things do not go wrong, if things go wrong, um, why don't life goes on anyway? I'm going to give it one day, only one day, where I just mope around or just read or just, even watch television, which I don't do too much. I just give it one day, because otherwise, something else. Well, I cannot. I'm missing out on my own life, because then I'm living somebody's life watching television all the time. I have to live my own life. So for that reason, I told Keith always, just give it one day, and after that, it's over and done with. Just mope for one day, whatever you do. Go for a walk or work out or just have a beer or something like this, or read a book or just lay around. After one day, it's over and done with. Keep moving, because you will never get the days back if you just hang out and just wait for something to happen. You make it happen, even little things, So that's my motto. Just and also, you're totally responsible for your own life. That's one thing I totally believe in. There are a lot of things happen to me over my lifetime. I don't blame anybody. It's historically speaking, some things you can never change. People who might have not your best interest at heart, you just keep them, push them outside of your inner circle. You just take really responsibility the way you conduct yourself, and I think that's worked for me. It's hard work, trust me, it's hard work, but I don't know how else to live, actually. I really don't.
Well, that explains it. It's amazing. I feel like I'm on a mentorship session because you're so unbelievably amazing. But it's funny, you won't believe this. 3 days ago, I had one of those bad days, and I'm like, oh, how many times can one get punched and
Exactly.
not surrender, right? And I thought exactly of the Nike slogan, shoot out to Nike, and I say, just do it. I was in my car, and I say, just get out of the car, just do it. And I say, that must be the most brilliant slogan that someone created.
I know.
And now you tell me that story. That's so funny.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. When I worked in Germany for 5 years, I'm also a sailor. And in order to get to Germany for my job there, for this project, I had a friend, and we both owned a sailboat. So we had sailed across the Atlantic.
Wow. Wow.
And eventually I ended up in Frankfurt, and he also had a job there. But when we had bad storms going across the Atlantic, because it was a small sailboat, it was only 30 feet long, which is not very long going across. And that's where this just do it. This thing was born, and I had made little notes around the. Inside the sailboat, and taped it to everywhere. Just do it. Don't give up. Just do it. Don't give up. And so when the storm usually comes, all those little notes, kind of because of the water and the humidity and everything, just fell on the floor again in the cabin. So I pasted them up again. Just do it. You can do it. And I think little. Phrases like that, or acknowledgments, do help you over rough spots. At least pushes you off this place where you're stuck, and maybe it's the first step. But you have to have something in your mind that tells you, can stay like this, move forward. And I give it, it's kind of cruel, just one day, but that's exactly the way I work. And the next day I kind of pull myself out of it. I don't want to do it, but I promised myself I will do it. So I think it's just, for me, it's just a way of life, really.
I think that's very good advice. I think procrastination is one of the worst things that a human being can do. Delaying, complaining about something, and instead of just taking action. And I think that's how a lot of people get surprised when they hear stories like you, all you've achieved, and you're someone that still talking about what you want to achieve. My dad is 85. He goes to work every single day.
Yes.
He always the only thing he complains about, what is this? I need some overtime. When we're talking about a project or something, he says, "Where do I get an extension?" That's
People like this. It's unbelievable. Yeah. For me, with all my work here, and Keith and I were working all the time, and he has his things going, and I have my things going. I'm going on a mission trip to Mexico in a couple of weeks, and then in May I will be going to Nigeria, to Kiberia slums there to provide clean water with the use of a filter. This is a mission here I'm working with, and I've been to Vietnam with the same company because I always feel I just have so much. In essence, this country gave me. And I have now the capabilities of paying back. And I go to places and help out on missions. For the mission trip last year to Vietnam was quite interesting because it's still a communist country. And we went out into the villages and so on. And I saw the hammer and sickle flags, the red flags, and the young pioneers on the streets, and the altars which they worship Ho Chi Minh, and so on. And it really hit me hard that people still have to live under this regime, and so that was a deja vu for me again, how far I have come to recognize this is evil. And luckily I was able to escape and also to be actually the person I really wanted to be.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it's a tough realization. In my case, I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. My son was 2 when I took him to Venezuela, and my daughter hasn't been. And because they listen to the news, and we have so many friends, and they tell the stories, and I say, "Would you come with mommy to Venezuela?" And my son tells me, "I don't want to die. I don't want to get killed." And it's so sad because it's your country. You want to show them where you were born, where their grandparents live, and it's just it makes me very sad that exactly what you're saying, and that's where you have poverty, and then you have a bad people doing bad things, and you have all the components for a perfect storm. That's why I personally, and that's a whole different podcast, but I get personally very frustrated with, for example, now there's a big telecommunication show going to happen soon, and you know where it's happening? In Cuba.
Oh, really?
And I get so frustrated. I say there's so many nice Caribbean islands, because this is a Caribbean association where you can host this event, and you go and have it in Cuba, where you're you're helping the people. Say you're helping people because you're bringing money, but
no,
I don't agree at all with that mentality.
They do get the money, but it's not the people who get the money.
Correct.
They still make 69 cents. I don't know if that's correct. An hour or something. I don't even know if they do this, but the money that goes in, the people who have the little shops and so on, or work for the big hotels, they do not get the money. It's like I'm going back to former East Germany. The elite, the communist elite, ate very well, but we didn't. We had to scrounge around. So that's just.
It's very sad.
It's very sad. Hopefully it
changes. Well, one thing I'll say, and I know you are a very busy person, and this has been fantastic. I definitely, once you come back and you want to share on an episode just about your missions and what you see there and your thoughts on that, I would love to have, in the future, an episode where you share the experience with that. I think a lot of people are intrigued by that kind of work, and they just don't know how to get into it or how to to make it happen. So I think that would be very, very interesting discussion.
I would love to do that because I got into it several years ago, and it's so fulfilling. And you can work it around your own work schedule if you really want to, but you always come back with a sense of we have too much, and there's so many people in the world. Just talking about the clean water, there are over 800 million people who do not have clean water. And this blows my mind, that children die all the time of typhoid fever and so on because there's no clean water. So I'd be happy to talk to you about this and various missions I'm going on. I'm going on to a vision mission where we bring glasses to people in Mexico, and we did this also in Vietnam. I went to another one. So no, I'd love to do this because that's extension of myself. Who I am. To go further out than just what I'm doing here. There's much more to do in the world than just my business, which is very important to me, but there are other things I like to bring into my life and I like to share with other people and other lives.
And that's why I think you were a great guest, because obviously, and Keith knew this, you stay connected with what makes you tick, with what gives you joy, with what makes you feel worthy.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, it's unbelievable, the people you meet. That's why part of mine is also a cross-cultural communication. I teach this, but I get new impulses from different people I meet, and I see it through different eyes, the way they see things, and it gives you another layer of the way of your surroundings. You don't just stay focused one way. It gives you another layer how people see things. Yeah, it's not only the one way to see it, but acknowledge other people's experiences and knowledge too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Ilse, I only have one question for you. Last one. If you have 1 hour to do to do something that makes you happy, that happy place that was the forest for you as a child, is that your sailboat, or what do you envision to be when you want to connect to your true essence?
Totally. I would love to be out at sea again, totally, for days or weeks, because you have to look at nature, how nature is really beautiful, and you just have your eyes wide open and look at it and see a powerful nature around you, and you're just a little person, not a little person, but you're just a person, one of billions of people, but you have to acknowledge how powerful nature is. And I liked, an old sailor told me one time, which I did actually, tied myself to the mast in a real bad storm while crossing, and I looked at nature, and it was powerful. I never forget this picture of the waves really going across the bow of the boat and so on. I'm tied to the mast and said, this is powerful. I never was scared. So I think that was something like that I think I could use again.
Wow, no, that definitely sounds powerful, tying yourself to the mast. Total.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Total, how would you say, combination of you and the nature in one, and trust, right? That everything will be okay.
Yeah. And do not fear it. Do look at it. Actually look at it, and experiences, and the fear goes away.
I love it. So I'm going to leave that because that's a great closing statement. When you
Thank you.
are afraid of something, anybody listening out there, and that next thing you want to do that gets you a little bit afraid, just look at it, do not fear, and just do it.
Yeah, just look at it with open eyes. I mean, really open eyes. Just say, don't say, yeah, and kind of look at it. Experience it. Bring it into your body, into your heart, into your mind, what you're seeing. And then, you feel like you can actually do more than you think you can.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ilse. I know I'm going to have a fantastic rest of my day after this chat with you. It's been great. And I really wish you all the best, and thank you also for all the work you're doing also in all those missions. I definitely will make sure to ask you about it and put it in the show notes so that people can check it out.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated our conversation, Leticia. You've been very kind.
Thank you, Ilse. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.